Hello, hello, good morning. Uh, Let me show you two pictures and just look at these pictures. Picture one for a couple of seconds and picture two. Picture one is of kids around 5 to 6 years of age. And let's look at picture two. These kids, let's assume these are the kids 15 years later. So the question is, what's the difference between these two pictures? And I've asked this question across cultures with various other pictures, pairs of pictures. And the answer, the words I get are very, very similar. The words I get are, and by the way, which picture do you like and want to see more? And it's first. It's no surprise across all cultures. You would, in fact, if study is done, you would like to gaze the first picture for at least 10 times more time because you want to see each kid and their expressions, etc. So the words I get when I ask for differences between the two pictures, the words I get are joy, vitality, vigor, etc., and sheer life. Some people say life. And that's what's the topic of my discussion today. If we encapsulate all these words, a word which emerges is a word I would like to call spark, which a lot of other people do use, the word spark. And every Indian language has this word. Every world language has this word. And it is no surprise because all studies done across the world actually convey the same thing. For example, Mr. George Land from NASA in 60s conducted a survey where he wanted to create a test for creativity, and he administered it across all different cohorts. And it's no surprise, this curve. If you ask across cultures, people will say the same thing. If you look at kids, if you videotape kids who are less than 6 years old, almost 100% of the kids show spark or creativity. And it drops radically to around 1 to 2%. In fact, one of my friends says 1 in 1,000 adults have spark. And I was just talking in the morning with a friend, and is it that we don't innately have spark? The answer is no, because each one of the adult was a kid one time. So every boring adult you see was once that cohort of kids who had spark. So what happened? Do adults become adults thinking I don't want spark? And what can we learn from these 2% of adults? And by adults I mean anyone more than 18 years of age. Anyone who can vote. And most of you are around that age within a few years. So it's a damn scary prospect that we had more spark when we were much young, whereas most of our lives are going to be spent as adults. So let me, as I was saying, even my mother used to use a word in Telugu called kala. This person has kala in his face, or that person has kala in his face. Every language has this word. For example, Sanskrit also has words like tejas, etc., which is spark and vigor. And we use these words day in and day out. I've been coaching, mentoring these young executives, and I also know that minority of them have spark. And it depresses me even further when I look at each of these young executives and I see the small 6-year-old child. And I knew that each and every one of these kids had spark. So what is it which drains away the spark? In fact, a lot of studies show that this decline actually does not start in late adulthood. It's not boring 70-year-olds or 60-year-olds. This decline starts very close to, with standard. When does the spark start declining? Very good. I hear ninth. And why is it ninth? Why is it ninth? Yeah, yes. The answer I hear is, when does a child first start hearing from society that this year is going to be a pivotal year? Ninth class, but when you go to 10th, does it stop? 10th is the most pivotal year. It will run through your life what you do in 10th. But does it stop at 10th? It never stops. It never stops. And there's a huge inverse correlation. The time you start hearing these messages are the time when your spark drains away and your accomplishment drains away. And the time you are not hearing these sentences is the time you are flourishing. So I've asked this question across different cultures. The following scenarios. An adult and a child went to a new city. Who learnt a new language better? Adult and a child went to a new city. Who learnt ice skating better? Adult and a child went to a new city. Who learned the musical instrument better? Adult and a child went to a new city. Who made more friends? Every time the answer is a child. And these are amazingly difficult things to accomplish. So let me ask you a question. Think of the first 5 years of your life and write down all your accomplishments, which is what all you learned, which are meaningful, which you are using right now in your life. And think of the last 5 years of your life and what all you learned. Even if you're in class 11 learning calculus, add differentiation or integration. Doesn't matter. And we instantly know one list is 10x more powerful than the other. And that too at a time when society was not telling us these were the most pivotal years of our life. In fact, when society started telling us, our spark just drained away. So what can we learn? Is it just bad news? The answer is no. We are learning a lot from psychology, especially people who study childhood now and how children are amazing learners, etc., etc. So let me also illustrate that some of these things we learn by the age 5 are so difficult that even robotics and engineers are learning from that. For example, a child learns to walk, a baby learns to walk from A to B. If you shove the baby, it balances and walks. If the baby has learned to walk on carpet, you put it on grass, it walks. You put it on gravel, it walks. You put it on slightly mountainous region, it walks, etc. And if you put water in front of it, it walks over the water and walks. If you have a lighted side of the room and dark side of the room, it moves towards the lighted side and walks. And if you give it a rose, it holds the rose and walks. So it's a very robust learning which happens in a baby or a child which is learning to walk. Whereas if you have a Mars rover and there are 4 wheels, even if one wheel is gone, it's kaput. It has a very constrained way of walking, these robots. And they are improving that watching human behavior. Even a dog, for example. We have all seen dog with thorn in one leg and it just hobbles and walks. So nature's devised this beautiful learning machine and humans are the epitome of that. So by nature we are wired to create, wired to learn, wired to have spark. So why is it that in my experience when I look at these young executives, only minority have spark left? And what can we do about it? And can we learn from people who still have spark? For example, if I say Amitabh Bachchan, he has spark. If I say Sri Sridharan, he has spark. If I say Nasiruddin Shah, he has spark. So why is it that we know people who have spark? But majority of the 70, 75-year-olds, do they have spark? We have to introspect. And what is it we can learn? So in my observation, there are 3 things which children do a lot and executives I have worked with spark do a lot and adults with spark do a lot. These 3 things are, 1, let's assume this executive called Anita with spark. And there are such people whom I have interacted with. Because this is fascinating, these are minorities. So Anita, mimicry. This young executive comes to office, every day wants to learn, every day wants to problem solve, is optimistic, is every day coming up and saying that this person is doing that better than what we are doing, let's improve, etc., etc. The way a child learns is similar. And in corporate world, we call it best practice. Let's use best practice from other places and improve our own self. Every child knows that. A child which is learning to walk or which is learning to talk will mimic from anybody, be it a ayah, be it a driver, be it a carpenter, be it a millionaire or be it a pauper. It doesn't care. In fact, I have lived in North India and my father can't speak good Hindi. But I can, my siblings, my sisters can. And the reason is we would not have copied my dad. A child is very, very intelligent. It will copy the vegetable seller, not the dad. So child mimics anyone better than them. In fact, they say the second child walks faster, learns to walk faster than the first child because the child completely mimics its elder sibling. So mimicry is what children do exceedingly well. Exceedingly well. And by the way, childlike adults do exceedingly well. There's no ego. We just want to create, we want to learn, we want to do things better. The second thing which I would like to highlight is children are actually more scientific in their approach, not adults. In fact, one of the sayings which my friend has, which I like a lot, he says, adults are like attorneys. They are lawyers. They want to prove their point. Whereas children are like scientists. The way you learn cycling is, you look at your friend is doing some acrobatics in a different way and your way is not working, you will just mimic that. Not only mimic that, you will accept that my way is not as good as the other way. In fact, what we say is, one of the great scientists, for example, Galileo, most of the scientists refer to pre-Galileo and post-Galileo age. And what did Galileo do which was so remarkable? There have been great scientists before him, there have been great scientists after him, but what Galileo did was taught us the power of experimentation. What Galileo did was, earlier before Galileo, the entire science was based on natural philosophy, which is that you would go up to nature and wait for nature to give it its data. For example, if you want to find out how a boulder falls from a mountain, you would go to a mountain, wait for a boulder to fall. It might happen in 6 months, 12 months, etc. You want to study seasons, you will wait for seasons. You will want to study periodic motion, you will look at periodic objects, for example, comets and all, for 1,000 years. Galileo was a person who started experimentation, which is, for example, inclined plane. This does not look like a mountain and that doesn't look like a rock. But he said in a deep way both are similar and I can learn a lot about nature. Now imagine what it did. It meant that every scientist in their backyard, every person in their backyard, scientist was not a term then, every person in their backyard who wanted to know about nature can do these experiments 10,000 times a day. And it suddenly, the human knowledge just took off in the last 400, 500 years. And similarly, Galileo did experiments in various other fields. In fact, the scientists of that era got together, those who were so enamored with, and they could see the power of Galileo, Newton and his friends. And now it's called the Fellow of Royal Society, but when they banded together, imagine how dangerous it was. They were not looking up to Pope, they were not looking up to the king. In fact, their motto, they said, was, we'll take nobody's word, except experiment's word. And that's what a child does. A child is a scientist. If this does not work, that works, I'll go with it. If you see a child trying to climb a sofa set from the left side and falls, and next day you see the child climbing from the right side, the child will start doing different tricks from the right side because it knows that's not working. But adults, you keep seeing making the same mistakes ever and ever and ever again. Every new year they have the same resolution. It's true. And the third aspect, this is not the adult bashing, but I'm just saying we can learn from the creative adults or the adults with spark, and there are. 2% is still a big number, at least. And if you look at the children also, for example, children, you see the same attributes. Children never stop with just being on a tricycle. Which child would want to be still on a tricycle? They move to a cycle with wheels, and then the cycle, and then the motorcycle, and on and on and on. They want newer and newer tricks. We are wired for that. But why is it that executives I meet in offices suddenly lose their temper? Till 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years they have this, suddenly it drains off. So my entire goal and the goal of a lot of my colleagues is, how do we ignite this back? Because we have big problems to solve in society. So the first was mimicry, second is scientific method. The third I want to share is called creativity. If I ask in any forum, in any culture, in any country, who shows more creativity? A child or an adult? Yes, it's child always, and it's a great area for investigation. For example, if you ask a child to draw a pink elephant with wings and spectacles, and you ask an adult to draw, and you ask people in the room to draw, one, adults will not even hear this question. They will move away. They will say, what use is this? There is no purpose here. But I asked two of my friends' daughters to draw. I faced no resistance. For example, Ashwini is a 7-year-old girl. She drew this. And then there's Akshaya, 10-year-old girl, she drew this. Now the point being not these drawings or the quality of these drawings. The point is that they're doing some wonderful stuff. When I ask these girls, what color is an elephant, they don't say pink, they say grey. When I ask these girls who wears spectacles, they say grandmother. When I ask these girls what has wings, they say birds, not elephant. That means they have a perfect model of the real world as it exists. But they are willing to suspend their disbelief and playfully merge these entities. That is what is creativity. Creativity is nothing but what a Steve Jobs does or what a great executive at Spark does. Every day they come to office, they look at assumptions and they know the assumptions, the real assumptions, but they are willing to play with it and be playful. Our world has big problems today, which are called second order problems now. And we need creativity to solve them. We want this spark, otherwise how will we solve these big problems? We will use the same old non-creative methods. So, Professor Ito from MIT has a favorite term called neoteny. How do we ensure in society we increase the neoteny index? Be it the corporates, be it the NGOs, be it government, be it anywhere where adults are. Because if you take a cohort of 100 adults, you know that minority have spark in them. So let me now, and as adults something goes wrong, and let me now share. And all these quotations from great creative people are exactly saying the same thing. It's no rocket science. But it is an important thing. So let me now share Mahatma Gandhi and Einstein's example. Time magazine wanted to polled in 2000 who are the people who have influenced us the most. And the top two names which emerged were Einstein and Gandhi. By far, they peeled off from almost the rest of the crowd. And we were lucky that both actually lived till late age. And when you look at the photographs, see the spark in them. It could light up a room. In fact, they used to say about Rabindranath Tagore also. He would walk into a room and light up the room. So there is something magical about this. It's not just spark, it's just spark for being joyous and living a life of vigor. But spark is completely 100% correlated to accomplishment. And so the last message I have is for all of you, especially those who are starting your journey in life, and all of you, and most of you here are between 16 and 20, please introspect whether the switch is on, the spark is on, because nothing would cheer us more as adults who are now seen enough of life to see every member of a youth community to continue their life full of vigor and spark. And my only thing is today, do something which you would do when you were 5 or 6 years old. Do some mad thing. Jump with joy, squeal with laughter, go back to your cycle. Do something which is sparky. So thanks, that's all.